Marcus Davis was not just any businessman. He was a testament to resilience, determination, and the power of perseverance in the face of systemic challenges. Born and raised in a modest neighborhood in Detroit, Marcus grew up understanding the complexities of race and poverty in America. From a young age, he faced the harsh realities of life as a black man in a society that often judged him before he could speak. Despite excelling academically, Marcus frequently found doors closed simply because of the color of his skin. The sting of rejection only fueled his desire to prove himself and change the narrative. Marcus started his career working at a small, local gas station, where he learned the ins and outs of the business. He absorbed everything: how the supply chains worked, how to manage employees, and the critical aspects of customer service. As he moved up the ranks, he faced overt racism from colleagues and customers alike, but he never allowed it to break his spirit. Marcus saved every dollar he earned, investing wisely, and eventually took a bold step, buying his first gas station. From there, his empire began to grow. Over the years, Marcus expanded his business, purchasing station after station, carefully turning each one into a thriving hub of customer service excellence and fair employment practices. He became a quiet force in the industry, a successful black entrepreneur who had earned his place through sheer will and savvy. Now, as the owner of a new station in a predominantly white suburban area, Marcus decided to visit the location personally. He wanted to understand the daily operations and the employees who made it run, but more importantly, he wanted to see if his values of respect and equality were being upheld. To do this, Marcus arrived at the station unannounced, dressed in casual clothes and driving a modest car, blending in as just another customer. He was prepared to observe and, if necessary, confront the realities of his new business venture in person. Tom Richards was a man set in his ways. For over 15 years, he had worked at the gas station, fueling cars, cleaning the lot, and making small talk with regular customers. Tall, with a weathered face and graying hair, Tom was the kind of guy who took pride in his work, even if he saw it as just a job. He was dependable, always on time, and rarely took a sick day. But beneath his exterior of routine competence lay deeply ingrained prejudices, shaped by years of exposure to a culture that quietly reinforced stereotypes. To Tom, the station was more than just a workplace. It was a microcosm of his world, one that didn't often challenge his beliefs or demand much of him beyond the basics of his job. The gas station itself was a typical suburban establishment, complete with a convenience store stocked with snacks, beverages, and essential car supplies. A faded American flag hung near the entrance, flapping gently in the wind, a silent reminder of the small-town values Tom held dear. The station had a loyal clientele of locals who appreciated the familiar faces and consistent service. Tom liked the predictability of his environment, the way each day unfolded almost exactly like the last. It was, to him, the stability he craved in a world that often felt chaotic. However, Tom's interactions with customers were often colored by his biases. He would greet white customers with a friendly nod or a quick chat about the weather, but his demeanor would shift noticeably when serving people of color. Tom's glances would turn suspicious, his words clipped and impatient. He believed he was simply being cautious, but his actions spoke of deeper, unspoken prejudices. He rarely considered the impact of his behavior, confident in his belief that he was just protecting the station from the wrong kind of people. The employees around him noticed but seldom confronted him. Tom was seen as a permanent fixture, a man too set in his ways to change. Tom's attitude had never been directly challenged, and in his mind, his prejudices were justified. On this particular day, Tom's routine would be disrupted in a way he never saw coming. Marcus's arrival would not just be a test of the station's customer service, but a confrontation of the narrow worldview that Tom had comfortably inhabited for far too long. On a crisp, sunny afternoon, Marcus pulled into the station driving an older model sedan, the kind that didn't draw attention. His casual attire, a simple t-shirt, jeans, and worn sneakers, intentionally downplayed his true identity. He wanted to blend in, to experience the station as any other customer would. As he stepped out of the car, Marcus took a moment to observe his surroundings. The busy pumps, the small convenience store buzzing with activity, and the employees, each lost in their tasks. It was a typical scene, one he'd seen countless times. But today, his perspective was different. This wasn't just any station. It was his, and he was here to see it for himself. Tom noticed Marcus immediately. From the moment Marcus stepped out of the car, Tom's gaze sharpened. He watched Marcus approach with a subtle scowl, already making assumptions. To Tom, Marcus didn't look like someone who belonged in this quiet, predominantly white suburb. The way he moved, the way he dressed, it all fed into the preconceived notions Tom held onto so tightly. As Marcus approached, Tom forced a tight smile, the kind that barely reached his eyes. "What can I do for you, buddy?" Tom asked, his tone laced with a hint of condescension as he glanced over Marcus's appearance. "I just need a fill-up," Marcus replied calmly, handing over some cash. His voice was steady, unbothered by the subtle hostility in Tom's eyes. Tom took the money but couldn't resist the urge to say more. "You sure you've got enough for that? Prices have gone up, you know," he said with a smirk, as if the comment was a joke. But the undertone was unmistakable, a suggestion that Marcus didn't belong, that he couldn't afford to be there. Marcus simply nodded, suppressing the urge to respond. He'd heard worse, much worse. Instead, he stood by and watched as Tom slowly, almost begrudgingly, began to pump the gas. Marcus noted every gesture, every sideways glance, and every muttered comment. This was a man who had never been challenged, someone who felt comfortable in his prejudice because he believed no one would ever call him out on it. As Marcus waited, he could feel the weight of Tom's disdain, palpable even in the silence. Other customers came and went, some stealing curious glances at the exchange, but none intervened. It was a scene that played out in small ways across countless businesses. Subtle, quiet discrimination that often went unnoticed and unchecked. Marcus was patient, though. He wasn't just any customer. He was a man on a mission, silently evaluating how his business was being run and how he would handle the situation brewing before him. As Tom continued to pump the gas, his discomfort turned into barely veiled hostility. He glanced at Marcus with a disdainful expression, his prejudice simmering just beneath the surface. Tom couldn't resist making snide remarks, emboldened by the assumption that Marcus was just another customer he could mistreat without consequence. He leaned against the pump, taking his time, making Marcus wait longer than necessary, enjoying the small, petty power he felt he held over the situation. "You know, not everyone is cut out to be around here," Tom said with a smirk, eyes darting to Marcus before looking away as if he hadn't said anything at all. "Lot of folks just don't fit in." Marcus, maintaining his composure, merely nodded, refusing to rise to the bait. His calm demeanor only seemed to irritate Tom further, who mistook Marcus's silence for submission. Tom looked around, noticing the glances from other customers and employees, but no one stepped in. Emboldened, he continued, pushing the boundaries of decency with each word. "You know, it's funny," Tom continued, his voice lowering but still loud enough for Marcus to hear. "I see all kinds of people coming through here, but it's always the same story. They think they can just walk in and take over. But let's be real, some folks just don't belong in places like this. You get what I mean." His tone was condescending, dripping with the kind of casual racism that made it clear Marcus was unwelcome in Tom's eyes. Marcus stood there, unflinching, listening to every word. He could see the discomfort in the other employees who tried to stay busy, avoiding eye contact. Tom's behavior wasn't just a personal attack. It was a reflection of the environment he had fostered, a toxic mix of unchallenged biases and quiet complicity. Tom handed Marcus's change, a sneer on his face as he added one final jab. "Better hold on to that. You're gonna need every penny." Marcus looked at Tom directly for the first time, his eyes steady and unwavering. He took the change, nodding slightly. "Thanks," he said, his voice calm but carrying a weight that Tom couldn't quite place. Marcus's restraint wasn't from fear or intimidation. It was deliberate, a choice born from years of navigating spaces where he wasn't wanted. He had learned long ago that sometimes the best response to ignorance was to let it play out, because tomorrow, the story would be very different. As Marcus drove away, Tom watched him go, still clueless about the man he had just insulted. To Tom, it was just another interaction, another chance to assert his misguided sense of superiority. But for Marcus, it was a moment of clarity, a reminder of why he fought so hard to build what he had. The stage was set, and Marcus was ready for what came next. Driving away from the station, Marcus felt a mix of anger and sadness. The sting of Tom's words lingered, but this wasn't the first time Marcus had faced such blatant disrespect, and it certainly wouldn't be the last. However, today was different. He wasn't just an ordinary customer subjected to ignorance. He was the owner, and that gave him power. He could have easily revealed his identity in the moment, shutting Tom down with the authority of his position, but Marcus chose restraint. He understood that anger, though justified, would not lead to the change he envisioned for his business. Marcus was a man who believed in deliberate action, not knee-jerk reactions. As he drove, Marcus replayed the encounter in his mind, analyzing every detail. Tom's behavior wasn't just a personal insult. It was a symptom of a larger issue that Marcus had dedicated his career to fighting against. The casual racism, the dismissive tone, the small but significant microaggressions. These were the barriers that he had broken down time and time again. Marcus had built his empire on the principles of respect, equality, and creating opportunities for those who were often overlooked. This incident, while disheartening, was a stark reminder of why his mission was so crucial. Marcus pulled over at a nearby park, taking a moment to breathe and collect his thoughts. He watched the children playing on the swings, parents chatting on benches, and felt a renewed sense of purpose. He knew he had to address the situation with Tom, not just as a disciplinary measure, but as an opportunity for a deeper lesson. Marcus believed that change often came from confrontation followed by education. He wasn't interested in simply punishing Tom. He wanted to challenge him, to force him to confront the ugliness of his own prejudices. Marcus called his assistant and arranged a meeting with his senior staff for the next day. He needed to make sure that when he returned to the station, he would have the full support of his team. They would discuss the steps necessary to ensure that his values were being upheld at every level of his business. For Marcus, this wasn't just about one employee's behavior. It was about setting a precedent that no one, regardless of position, would be allowed to demean or devalue another human being in his company. Marcus sat in his car a little longer, watching the sun begin to set. He thought about the journey that had brought him here, the countless obstacles he'd overcome, and the battles he'd fought both publicly and in private. This was just another moment in a long line of challenges, but it was also an opportunity to make a difference. Tomorrow, when he returned to that station, Marcus would be ready, not just to reveal who he was, but to remind everyone, especially Tom, of what true leadership looked like. The next day, Marcus arrived at the gas station, but this time, his presence was anything but subtle. He pulled up in a sleek, black luxury car, a stark contrast to the modest vehicle he had driven the day before. Accompanying him were several key executives from his company, all dressed in sharp suits, carrying documents and briefcases. The sight of Marcus and his entourage immediately drew the attention of everyone at the station. Employees whispered among themselves, confused and curious, while customers glanced over, intrigued by the sudden appearance of what looked like a high-stakes business meeting. Tom, who was wiping down a pump at the time, glanced up and froze. He recognized Marcus immediately, but this time, there was no casual attire or unassuming demeanor. Marcus exuded authority and confidence, his expression serious as he walked across the lot with a purpose. Tom's heart sank as he put two and two together, realizing with horror that the man he had treated so poorly the day before was not just another customer. He was the new owner of the entire station. Marcus approached the front of the station, flanked by his team. The store manager hurried out, nervously adjusting his tie as he greeted Marcus with a firm handshake. "Mr. Davis, it's an honor to have you here," the manager stammered, trying to mask his anxiety. Marcus nodded, his eyes briefly scanning the familiar surroundings. This was his territory now, and today was about making it clear who was in charge. "Thank you," Marcus replied, his voice steady. He turned his attention to the employees gathered nearby, his gaze eventually landing on Tom, who stood awkwardly, unsure of what to do. Marcus motioned for Tom to come over, and Tom hesitantly approached, his face pale and his demeanor suddenly timid. "I'd like to have a word with you, Tom," Marcus said, his tone even but unmistakably firm. Tom nodded silently, his mind racing. He had never felt so exposed, so small. The tables had turned completely, and he knew there was no hiding from what was about to happen. Marcus addressed the gathered employees first, ensuring that everyone knew this wasn't a private matter. It was a public lesson. I visited this station yesterday, incognito, to see how things were being run, Marcus began, his voice carrying the weight of authority and disappointment. And what I witnessed was not just unprofessional, but unacceptable on every level. He paused, letting his words sink in as his eyes met Tom's. Tom, do you recognize me? Tom swallowed hard, nodding. Yes, sir, he mumbled, barely able to meet Marcus's gaze. I was the man you disrespected yesterday, Marcus continued, his voice unwavering. I stood here as a customer, but you treated me with prejudice, making assumptions based on nothing but my appearance. This isn't just about you and me. This is about the kind of workplace we want to create. A place where every person is respected, regardless of who they are. The tension in the air was palpable. Tom felt the weight of every word, the eyes of his coworkers, and the realization that his actions had finally caught up with him. Marcus's calm but powerful demeanor left no room for doubt. Things were about to change, and Tom was at the center of it all. Marcus took a moment to let the weight of his words hang in the air, giving everyone time to fully grasp the gravity of the situation. He turned his full attention to Tom, whose face was flushed with a mix of embarrassment, fear, and the stark realization of his own misjudgment. Marcus's expression was firm, but not vengeful. He was here to teach, not simply to punish. Tom, Marcus began, his voice calm yet commanding, I'm not just the owner of this station. I'm the owner of all the stations you see under this brand. I've worked hard to build a business that reflects my values, respect, hard work, and treating people with dignity, no matter who they are or where they come from. He paused, watching as Tom's eyes flickered with recognition and regret. Yesterday, I stood in front of you as a customer, and instead of seeing a human being, you saw someone to belittle. You made assumptions based on my appearance, on my skin color, and you treated me like I didn't belong. Tom's throat tightened. He had no excuses, no justifications that could soften what he had done. I didn't know, he stammered, his voice breaking under the pressure of his own realization. I didn't know it was you. That's the problem, Tom, Marcus replied, his voice tinged with both disappointment and a sense of purpose. It shouldn't matter who I am. It shouldn't matter what I look like or how I'm dressed. Every person who walks onto this property deserves to be treated with respect and dignity. What you did wasn't just about me. It was about how you see people who don't look like you, and that kind of attitude has no place in my business. The other employees stood in stunned silence, absorbing every word. Many of them had witnessed Tom's behavior in the past but had never spoken up, fearing the repercussions or simply brushing it off as Tom being Tom. Today, however, was different. Marcus's presence and his words were a stark reminder that they were working in a new era, one where accountability was not optional. Tom looked down, his pride shattered. He knew Marcus was right. He had been complacent in his beliefs, comfortable in his prejudices, and now he was being forced to confront them in the most public way possible. I'm sorry, Tom finally whispered, his voice barely audible. I didn't mean. Marcus cut him off, not harshly, but with a firm resolve. Sorry isn't enough, Tom. This isn't just about saying the right words when you're caught. This is about understanding why what you did was wrong and making the choice to be better. I built this company from nothing, facing the same kind of ignorance and prejudice you showed yesterday, and I will not allow it to take root in any of my businesses. Tom stood there, visibly shaken, as Marcus's words pierced through the facade he had built over the years. This was a moment of reckoning, not just for him, but for the entire station. Marcus's speech wasn't just directed at Tom. It was a declaration to everyone that change was not just a possibility, but a necessity. The confrontation ended with Tom standing alone in his thoughts, the full weight of his actions, and the potential for redemption resting squarely on his shoulders. Marcus had made his point clear. Respect was not just a policy, it was a demand. And Tom would have to decide if he was willing to meet that standard. As the reality of Marcus's words settled over the station, the atmosphere grew tense. Tom's mind was a whirlwind of shame, fear, and guilt. For years, he had operated under the radar, his prejudices unchecked and unchallenged, hiding behind the shield of his seniority and the complacency of those around him. But now, stripped of his usual bravado, he stood exposed, his actions laid bare not just to Marcus but to all his co-workers. The sense of security he had always felt in his job was gone, replaced by an unsettling uncertainty. Marcus turned to Tom once more, his expression a mix of sternness and something that Tom hadn't expected, a glimmer of hope. "Tom, your behavior yesterday showed me everything I needed to know about the kind of environment that's been allowed to exist here," Marcus stated. "But this isn't just about what you did. It's about what happens next." Tom swallowed hard, his eyes darting between Marcus and the group of executives standing nearby, all watching him with a mix of judgment and expectation. He felt like a defendant on trial, waiting for a verdict that seemed all but inevitable. He braced himself for the worst, half expecting Marcus to fire him on the spot, to make an example of him in front of everyone. The thought of losing his job, a job he had relied on for years, sent a jolt of panic through him. "Marcus, please," Tom began, his voice cracking with desperation. "I know what I did was wrong. I wasn't thinking. I was stupid and careless. I've never been called out like this before." Marcus listened, but his expression remained unwavering. "Tom, this isn't just about me calling you out," Marcus responded, his voice carrying the weight of authority. "It's about giving you a choice. Right now, you're at a crossroads. I could let you go, and frankly, that would be the easiest thing to do. It would send a clear message that there are consequences for actions like yours, and I wouldn't be wrong to do it." Tom's shoulders slumped. He looked defeated, already accepting the possibility of losing everything. But Marcus wasn't finished. "However," Marcus continued, his tone shifting slightly, "I believe in second chances when they're earned. So, I'm going to give you a choice. You can walk away today, and we'll part ways. Or, you can stay and prove that you're willing to change. But that's not just words. It means real effort. You'll attend mandatory training on diversity and inclusion. You'll work under close supervision to ensure that your actions match your words. And most importantly, you'll have to earn back the trust of your coworkers and the customers you serve." Tom stared at Marcus, stunned. He hadn't expected this, a chance to make things right. The path Marcus laid out wasn't easy, and Tom knew it would be an uphill battle to prove himself. But the alternative, walking away in disgrace, was a prospect he couldn't bear. This was more than just a job. It was a chance at redemption. I want to change," Tom said, his voice barely above a whisper but filled with sincerity. "I don't want to be that person anymore. I'll do whatever it takes." Marcus nodded, his expression softening slightly. "Good. Because this isn't just about you, Tom. It's about showing that even those who make mistakes can grow, can learn, and can change. I'm giving you this chance because I believe in what this company stands for, and now, it's up to you to show that you can be part of that vision." Tom knew that this was his moment to turn things around. The path forward would be tough, and he would have to confront the prejudices he had harbored for so long. But in that moment, he realized that Marcus was offering him more than just a second chance. He was offering him a new way of seeing the world, and Tom was determined not to waste it. As Marcus finished speaking, the weight of the decision hung heavily in the air. Tom stood in front of his boss and colleagues, feeling both humbled and overwhelmed by the gravity of the opportunity he'd been given. Marcus had laid out a clear path, one that required genuine change, not just empty promises. This wasn't a slap on the wrist or a simple lecture. It was a challenge that demanded introspection, growth, and a commitment to becoming a better person. Tom knew that Marcus's offer was rare, especially in a world that often chooses swift punishment over rehabilitation. Marcus took a step back, surveying the faces of his employees who had been silently witnessing this dramatic exchange. Some looked at Tom with a mix of skepticism and hope, while others were still processing the unexpected turn of events. Marcus addressed the group, knowing this moment was pivotal not just for Tom, but for everyone who worked at the station. "We're all here to do more than just fill tanks and ring up sales," Marcus said. his voice resonating with conviction. "We're here to create a place where everyone feels welcome and valued, where respect is the foundation of everything we do. That starts with each of us taking responsibility for our actions and committing to doing better." Turning back to Tom, Marcus extended his hand, not as an act of forgiveness, but as an invitation to start anew. "This is your chance, Tom," Marcus said firmly. "You can choose to walk the hard road of change or take the easy way out and leave. But if you stay, you're committing to being held accountable, to learning, and to growing. The choice is yours, and it's not one to be taken lightly." Tom hesitated for a moment, staring at Marcus's outstretched hand. It was a gesture that symbolized everything Tom had never confronted about himself: his biases, his fears, and the walls he'd built around his worldview. Accepting that hand meant accepting the journey ahead, one filled with uncomfortable truths and a constant need to prove his worth, not just to Marcus but to himself and everyone around him. Slowly, Tom reached out, gripping Marcus's hand firmly. "I'll do it," he said, his voice trembling but resolute. "I'll do whatever it takes to change." Marcus nodded, satisfied with Tom's decision, but fully aware that words were just the beginning. "We'll hold you to that," Marcus replied. "This isn't going to be easy, and there will be no shortcuts. You'll have to show up every day willing to put in the work, to confront your own biases, and to build a better version of yourself. And know this, you'll be watched, not just by me, but by everyone here. This is your chance to make amends and become the person you can be proud of." Tom felt a surge of mixed emotions: relief, anxiety, and a faint but growing sense of hope. He knew the journey ahead would be daunting, and he understood that earning back the respect he had lost would take time and effort. But for the first time in a long time, Tom felt something he hadn't allowed himself to feel: the possibility of change. Marcus ended the meeting by reaffirming his commitment to transforming the station into a model of respect and inclusivity. "Today isn't just about Tom. It's about setting a new standard for all of us," Marcus declared. "We will be a place where every individual is treated with the dignity they deserve. This is our mission, and I expect nothing less from each of you." The group dispersed, and Tom lingered for a moment, absorbing the enormity of what had transpired. As Marcus and his team walked away, Tom stood alone, contemplating the long road ahead. He knew it wouldn't be easy, but as he watched Marcus drive away, he felt a newfound determination to prove that change was possible, not just for himself, but for anyone willing to face their flaws and strive for something better. In the weeks that followed, the gas station became a crucible of transformation, not just for Tom, but for everyone who worked there. Marcus's decision to keep Tom on board under strict conditions set the tone for a new era at the station. Diversity and inclusion training sessions were held regularly, led by professionals who didn't just lecture but engaged employees in real conversations about prejudice, empathy, and respect. These sessions weren't just boxes to check. They were eye-opening experiences that challenged everyone to reflect on their own biases and behaviors. For Tom, the process was humbling and often uncomfortable. He found himself sitting in rooms filled with people who had witnessed his worst moments, forced to listen to stories of discrimination and bias from perspectives he had never considered. During one particularly poignant training, a Black colleague shared how they'd felt belittled and judged not just by strangers, but sometimes by the very people they worked alongside. Tom listened in silence, feeling the sting of recognition as he realized that his own actions had contributed to the pain they described. Tom's journey of re-education extended beyond the formal sessions. He spent hours reading, asking questions, and most importantly, listening, really listening, to the experiences of those around him. He worked closely with a mentor assigned by Marcus, someone who had been in the industry for years and had seen both the best and the worst of people. This mentor didn't sugarcoat anything. They called Tom out when he reverted to old habits, but they also offered guidance and support when he made genuine efforts to change. The employees at the station noticed the shift in Tom's demeanor. He was no longer the surly, dismissive figure who judged others from behind the safety of his routine. Instead, Tom became more approachable, more willing to admit when he was wrong, and more open to the diverse range of people who walked through the station's doors each day. His progress wasn't perfect. Old habits die hard. But the sincerity of his efforts was undeniable. Marcus had made it clear that the door to redemption was open, But Tom was the one who had to walk through it, step by difficult step. One day, a regular customer, a middle-aged black woman who had often been on the receiving end of Tom's curt service, noticed the change. She approached him at the counter, a skeptical look on her face. "You seem different these days, Tom," she said, her tone half joking but edged with genuine curiosity. Tom looked up, pausing before he spoke. "I'm trying," he admitted honestly, meeting her gaze. "I've got a lot to make up for, and I'm just trying to do better. One day at a time." She nodded, a faint smile breaking through. "That's all anyone can do, I guess," she said, and for the first time, Tom felt a flicker of something he hadn't expected: acceptance. It was a small moment, but for Tom, it was a sign that his hard work was beginning to pay off. Meanwhile, Marcus kept a watchful eye on the station's progress. He knew that change wasn't instant, and it wasn't easy. But as he visited periodically, he saw a gradual transformation in the way the station operated, not just in service but in spirit. The atmosphere felt lighter, more welcoming. Employees communicated openly, and there was a noticeable reduction in the tension that had once permeated the workplace. Marcus's vision of a respectful and inclusive environment was slowly becoming a reality. The impact of his leadership extended beyond just the walls of the station. It began to ripple outward, affecting how employees treated each other and the community they served. Tom's story became a quiet testament to the power of second chances and the belief that, with the right guidance and determination, even the most stubborn of hearts could change. As the weeks turned into months, the gas station evolved into more than just a place to refuel cars. It became a symbol of transformation, a reminder that respect and empathy could turn even the most unlikely individuals into allies. Marcus had set the stage, but it was Tom, and every employee who embraced the challenge, who proved that the journey towards understanding and respect was worth every step. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and check out this next story. It's incredibly moving.